I'm Tina Fordham, founder of Fordham Global Foresight, and you're watching The Navigator, geopolitical strategy for boards and the C-suite, produced in collaboration with the London Stock Exchange Group. It's been another eventful month with the continuation of the conflict in the Middle East, while Russia and Ukraine remain at war as we head into another winter in Europe and heightened tensions in the South China Sea. We also have an ASEAN summit coming up where Washington and Beijing will meet in the hopes of improving diplomatic relations. Plus, we have a big deadline in Washington on November 17th for the U.S. Congress, not always known for its reasoned approach to problem solving, which needs to come together to avoid a U.S. government shutdown. If a shutdown isn't avoided, it could possibly trigger another rating agency downgrade. So to help structure our discussion, we've created a proprietary analytical framework, our geopolitical Navigator watch list, which is a relative ranking of the geopolitical factors most likely to move markets. It takes into consideration the extent to which these risks are priced in or would represent a significant shock. If you're not sure right now how geopolitics matters for your business, let me put it this way. If you're concerned about the interest rate hiking cycle, and who isn't, these are the developments to track because any of the ones on the far right have the potential to be systemic, meaning they could trigger a growth or an asset price shock. They are among the top non-quantitative factors that the Fed will be watching. Many of the other factors on the watch list are influential for the outlook for supply chain continuity and global trade, or they have sectoral implications. For example, coups in West Africa for metals and mining, and the EU ruling on redirecting interest on impounded Russian assets for law. Looking ahead, what does all of this mean for the 2024 geopolitical outlook, which we've titled Inflection Point? In mathematics, the inflection point is where the shape of the line curves, and I think this is an accurate description of where we find ourselves today. So note that we're not talking yet about a tipping point because good leadership, good decisions by policymakers, the triumph of reason, even good weather or good luck can all help reduce the risk temperature. So do we feel lucky? Let's start by looking at the known knowns, which in political terms usually means elections. 2024 will see elections everywhere. 2/3 of the citizens of the world's democracies will go to the polls, over 2 billion people. Given that this is the first big election cycle since the pandemic and the cost of living increases, in most cases, it's going to be a safe bet to expect that incumbent governments are in trouble. And that leads us to the linchpin for 2024, the question that I get asked most often in global boardrooms: will Donald Trump return to the White House? Despite a weekend of terrible polls for Joe Biden, it's actually far too early to say that a Trump 2.0 return is inevitable, though it is definitely plausible. The fact is that a year in advance, U.S. election polls have zero predictive power. But that's not to say that world leaders aren't paying close attention to the trend line and hedging their bets accordingly. So to say that 2024 will be the most consequential election year in U.S. history might feel like an overstatement, but let me explain the logic. Given the possibility of 2 and possibly 3 systemic global conflicts, record high mistrust in institutions, and doubts about election fairness, plus the extent to which wars are disrupting global public opinion, these factors have increasingly become interlinked in what I'm calling new doom loops. A case in point is how the war in the Middle East is fragmenting the political left from the US to here in the UK, to France, Germany, and beyond, in ways that could affect election outcomes as well as the legislative agenda on matters like immigration and more. And that's before we even get to thinking about the impact of AI, conspiracy theories, misinformation, and other factors that matter for political consensus and social cohesion. Then there are the wild cards, like legal decisions and other untested variables that could severely test American institutions and democracy with global implications. Buckle up because we've never been here before. To wrap up, the other question I'm asked most often is, what risks are we not paying attention to? My answer is that the most disruptive risks, perhaps apart from natural disasters, are usually right in front of us. They are hiding in plain sight. So while we have been conditioned to watch for exotic creatures with feathers and horns like black swans and white rhinos, the risks we should most concern ourselves with aren't really fantastic beasts. It's perhaps more the case that familiarity has bred complacency, and I think complacency is probably the #1 risk. I will stop there for now. I hope you found this useful, though it may not be cheerful. I like to quote the French scientist Louis Pasteur, who said that fortune favors the brave, but chance favors the prepared mind. And this concept is what guides our approach. If you'd like to stay in touch with our views, please connect on LinkedIn, sign up to our free newsletter, and of course, we're happy to speak to your board, leadership team, and clients, and help your firm navigate geopolitical complexity.